Here are 3 true scary stories from Reddit. The links to the stories are in the description below. Enjoy. Number 1. This happened with me a few days ago, and I'm still a bit shaken. I went and visited my cousin a few towns over because she needed some help. I spent a rather long time helping her out. We finished a few hours later, but she wanted me to stay a little bit longer because we didn't see each other that often. So I did. I ended up staying a couple of hours longer, and when I left, it was already dark outside. Not that I minded. I had never been afraid of the dark. Plus, I always carry mace around with me, just in case. I headed to the train station, and when I got there, I took a seat and waited for my train to arrive. I was wearing headphones and listening to music while reading text messages. Suddenly, I felt someone sit next to me. It was a middle-aged man. He was bald, quite tall and skinny. I didn't pay much attention to him until he touched my shoulder and smiled at me. He started talking, but I had my headphones on so I couldn't hear him. I pulled one of my headphones out and looked at him. "Excuse me?" He gave me a wide and creepy smile as I turned my attention to him. The look in his eyes made it seem like he wanted to eat me up or something. He pulled his hand away from my shoulder and placed it on my thigh instead. He asked, "Where is a pretty girl like you headed?" I was confused. Why would he ask that? I was already breaking one of my mother's rules by talking to a stranger. I decided that I should lie. "I'm going to Tallinn." His smile widened even more. I was really starting to get nervous. Why won't he just stop staring at me and smiling? Was the question that ran through my mind. "I'm going there as well." I just nodded and didn't say anything. Thankfully, the train arrived a few minutes later. I quickly went to an area where there were more people and I didn't see him follow me. I sat down, took my phone out and started looking at random YouTube videos. I was already feeling much better and stayed like this until I had to get off. I got off at my actual stop, not Tallinn, and started walking home. I was humming quietly to my songs until I felt the sensation of eyes burning into my back. I turned around and there he was. That friggin' creep was smiling widely at me and started to quicken his steps. I quickly broke into a run. I am no athlete, but I can run for a long time when needed. I could hear him talking behind me. I didn't pay much attention to it, as the only thought I had running through my mind was just to run. "Beautiful. Stop running and let's have a good time." I quickly took out my mace, just in case, holding it tightly in my hand. I knew I'd have to defend myself if he caught up with me. I saw the town lights in the distance and knew if I could get there, then I would be safe. I screamed out loudly when he caught up with me and grabbed my hand. I did the first thing that came to my mind and sprayed him with the mace. He screamed out in pain and let go of me. I used that chance to run again. I was already very tired at that point, but I didn't care. I knew I had to keep running, and that's what I did until I got all the way home. I broke down crying when I got in the house and explained everything to my parents. My mom held me and wiped my tears away, letting me stay home for a day to collect myself a bit. I can only imagine what that creep wanted to do to me, and I'm glad to still be here today. So to the train station creep, let's never meet again. Number 2. I'm a cosplayer. I'm not famous, but I'm well known enough in my city to be recognized once in a while. I wrote a while back about 3 men on a train who tried to attack me. I rarely take the train unaccompanied now, but sometimes I have to. I prefer to be able to drive everywhere, but parking in my city is one of the most expensive in Canada, and I'm a freelance photographer by profession and can't always afford to pay $30 for a couple hours downtown, so I take the train. My boyfriend had stayed at a friend's the night before and would be meeting me on the other side of town to take me to the photo shoot. I was dressed as Misa Amane from Death Note. I was taking the train to meet up with a cosplayer who would be Light. I was dressed as Misa, but I was wearing a coat over my outfit and regular shoes. So besides my big false lashes and the hem of my pleather skirt, there was nothing to indicate I was cosplaying. It was 5:30 a.m. We were driving to the next town over for the shoot, so we had to get started early. It was a Saturday morning, so most of the people on the train were those heading home from an overnight shift. I actually really like the early hours because usually no one gives me a hard time or even speaks to me. But every once in a while, I had to ride from the second to last stop in the northwest all the way to a station in the southwest, so the train crosses half the city. I was only 6 stops away when the train stopped downtown and a man got on. Though there were many empty seats, the man chose to sit directly across from me. "Hey," he said. I hadn't had any coffee and wasn't up for conversation, so I didn't respond. I pretended not to hear him and kept scrolling through Facebook. "Hey," he said louder. I glanced up at him. "You're really pretty." To be honest, I am pretty. I'm not skinny or even super fit, but I'm also not overly heavy anymore. I'm used to people telling me I'm pretty, especially when I've done my makeup for a photo shoot. I didn't respond verbally. I just nodded slightly to acknowledge that I heard him. "Did you hear me? I said you're pretty. You look really hot." His voice was irritating. "Yeah, I'm pretty. I heard you," I responded. I was feeling irritable before he started talking to me. You know, lack of coffee and all. And I didn't really feel like thanking him. "You're not that pretty." He practically snarled this. "Vain bitches like you should be taught a lesson." I've gotten this reaction before from men, usually online or from catcallers. There's an idea some people have that you're only what they say you are. Some men don't want women to know they're beautiful unless they say they are. I rolled my eyes and went back to looking at my phone. 4 stops left. I knew that after the next stop, there would be a stretch through a tunnel, but the lights were on in the train, so I wasn't worried about him doing anything scary. "I should cut that pretty face," he said. A few passengers looked up at this point. The guy was speaking loudly, and I was a little nervous now. The train stopped and a few people got on. 3 stops left. The guy leans towards me and says, "I'm gonna fuck you up if you get off this train." This made me extremely nervous. The guy cosplaying as Light didn't have a car, so we'd be walking to the mall 10 minutes away from the stop to wait for my boyfriend. Light's not a big guy. He's an inch shorter than me, actually. "Fight me," I said quietly. I don't know why, but I have a tendency to act stupid and tough when I'm afraid. This guy was bigger than me and could probably kill me with little difficulty. But it was 4:45 a.m. and I was grouchy and hadn't had my coffee. "I'm gonna break your neck and fuck your face," he said loudly, right as we were passing through the tunnel. The train is always very loud in the tunnels, and I don't think any other passengers could hear him. We cleared the tunnel and approached the next stop. This is the last one before I have to get off, and most of the people exited. So now, besides me and the angry guy, there are only 2 other people on the train. A big guy wearing headphones and a little old lady. I looked right at the prick and yelled, "Back off, man! My boyfriend is waiting for me at the station." I lied. I wish I'd chosen to sit near a door. I'm scared that if I try to get up and push an emergency call button, he'll attack me. "No one would want a fat fucking bitch like you. But don't worry, I like them fat," he said loudly. I'm 5'6" and 150 pounds. I'm slightly overweight, but hey, I work out and have healthy eating habits. "Thistle," I heard someone say loudly. It was the big guy with the headphones. Thistle is the name I use when I'm cosplaying. I thought that was you. What are you doing up so early? He walked over to where I was and sat down next to me. I didn't recognize him, but I realized that he heard what the guy said to me and was probably coming to defend me. Just meeting up with some friends. I try to keep my voice cheerful. I'm careful to avoid looking at the guy across from us. Oh, nice. I'm just getting off work. Where are you getting off? He asks me. Next stop, I reply. No kidding? Me too. The guy across from us has leaned back in his seat, though he continued to glare at us. When we got to the next stop, the big guy gets off the train with me. We meet up with my friend and he walks us to the mall. The creepy guy followed us for a few blocks and then disappeared. I was still afraid, so the guy waited with us until my boyfriend arrived. We wound up giving him a lift home because his actual stop was about 5 stops further down the line. I don't know if the creep on the train would have actually hurt me, but I'm glad I didn't have to find out. So, creep on the train, let's not meet again. And headphones guy, I'll see you at the next convention. Number 3. This is, without a doubt, the most terrifying thing that has ever happened to me. I only told a few people, but feel like I need to share it here. I hope that my story helps any students traveling abroad to be more cautious. So, a little background first. This happened to me about 5 years ago when I was 19 and studying abroad in Italy. Our school had its own campus, about an hour outside of Rome, in a quiet town where the Pope has a summer place of his own. Part of our school's program was that we had to leave campus for 10 days in October for vacation or to explore the rest of Europe. Everyone would split off into groups with their friends. I didn't have a particular group I was attached to, but not wanting to go by myself, I asked these 2 girls I was already friends with if I could travel with them. They were best friends and roommates and were nice enough to let me go with them. We decided to travel from Rome to Austria, Prague, and Germany via Eurorail. We had fun the entire trip and went without incident. That is, until the last day, which is when my awful experience began. On the last day of our trip, we were in Munich meeting up with most of our class. As a school tradition of sorts, the 2 girls I was traveling with and myself had tickets to take the overnight train back to Rome from Munich. We were to leave around midnight. During that day, one of the girls tells me that she had changed her plans 10 days prior and was going to stay in Munich overnight, then come back the next day. This was a complete surprise to me, but I wasn't worried because she was joining up with our classmates and was staying in an already booked hostel with them. Plus, I would still be traveling with the other girl. Then to my dismay, the other girl said she also changed her mind and is going to stay overnight in Munich too. I asked where she planned to stay as we hadn't booked a room in a hostel. She said she would sneak into the hostel of her friend and share a bed with her. I told her I was really uncomfortable traveling alone and that it wasn't fair for her to abandon me like that. She told me nonchalantly that I could just find a hostel and book another ticket if I cared so much. I told her I didn't have the extra money to pay for a separate ticket back to Rome, let alone a hostel. Despite my pleas, those petty girls said essentially that it was not their problem and ditched me. Luckily, we had already met up with another group of our classmates who felt bad for me and spent the entire last day of our vacation running all around Munich trying to find me a hostel to stay at, and even offered to pool together money to help me pay for a ticket back. Unfortunately, it was Oktoberfest in Germany, and literally every hostel was completely booked up, and despite my attempts to sneak into my friend's hostel with them, I was stopped and thrown out. At this point, it's nighttime and I was defeated and worried. Those classmates who had tried to help me out were still sticking with me. I figured the only options I had were to sleep outside on a bench in Munich or take the overnight train back to Rome by myself. It wouldn't be super safe, but I figured I'd be around other people, so maybe it wouldn't be completely awful. I decided to go ahead and take the overnight train back to Rome. My classmates walked me to the station and saw me onto the train. So now I'm on this overnight train by myself and I head to my carriage. It was a room off the main hallway with 6 seats. I was the first one in the carriage and I sit next to the window on one side and put my giant backpack, which was my only luggage, on the 2 seats next to me. Eventually, 2 German guys in their 30s come in and are polite enough and sit opposite me. They're conversing with each other and are looking at maps of Rome. I feel safe enough with these guys since they're minding their own business. But then, this is where it gets bad. I settle in and listen to music and try to sleep for a bit. After an hour or so, I start to notice there's a super sketchy guy standing right outside our carriage in the middle of the hallway, just staring at me. I'm completely freaked out because 1, no one is supposed to be just standing and blocking the hallway. You're either on your way to the bathroom or headed back to your carriage. 2, he didn't break eye contact with me once. He just kept staring at me with a sinister look on his face, like he wanted to eat me up. Now I'm kind of freaking out and trying to look away, pretending like I didn't really notice him. I wait a bit before checking to see if he's moved on, and when I look back, he's still there. He hasn't moved and is still leering at me from behind the window door of my carriage. I wanted to go shut the curtains to our carriage, but I didn't want to get close to him or piss him off or anything. So I turned to the 2 German guys and quietly tell them that the guy out there is creeping me out and making me uncomfortable. I asked if one of them could casually close the curtains. I had hoped they'd be men and kind of protect me and tell the guy to bugger off or whatever, but they seemed annoyed and mumbled that they would, but never did. When I brought it up again, they acted kind of miffed, but eventually shut the curtain. I thought that surely this would have deterred the guy from lurking outside and soon fell asleep. A few hours later, I woke to 3 young Germans in their mid to late 20s entering our carriage and taking the remaining 3 seats. As they come in, I notice that the creepy guy from before is still there, standing outside my door. I freak out inside and really don't feel comfortable at all. Now I'm a bit panicky. I try to talk to the younger Germans, but they weren't very friendly. Perhaps it's because they didn't speak English well. It's now been several hours and realized that I really have to pee. But the only way for me to get to the bathroom is to exit the carriage and walk down to the very end of the hallway, away from the other carriages and people. When the 3 young Germans had come in earlier, they had moved the curtain a bit and was able to see the creepy dude still standing out there leering at me. He refused to go away. I noticed that when people walk by him, he kinda acts casual, like he's waiting for someone or something, and looks away from my carriage. But once they're gone, he's back at it again. I try to hold it in as long as I can, but this is a 12-hour train ride and it would be another 4 hours or more before we made it to Rome, and there was no way I was gonna make it. At this point, everyone had been asleep for a long time and I didn't want to wake anyone, but I had to nudge the young Germans on my way out. I try to tell them I'm going to the restroom and if they could just keep an eye on me and the creepy lurker, but they brush me off like I'm a jerk for waking them. They mumble something and go back to sleep. I'm just about to piss my pants and I exit the carriage, and of course, I run right into the creepy dude standing outside. There's hardly any room in the hallway and he's not giving me any space to pass. He's around 6'2" and I'm 5'4", and he's just staring me down. So I do my best to push past him as fast as I can. I enter the bathroom and lock the door behind me. My heart is racing and I'm gonna go as fast as I can so that hopefully he hasn't followed me here. But alas, I exit the restroom and he's right there with his disgusting smile on his face. I mean, I don't like to exaggerate, but there was evil in his eyes and it chilled me. I was sick to my stomach. I tried to squeeze by him quickly and he started to press himself against me. I gave him the nastiest face and yelled at him, "Let me go!" and praise tiny baby Jesus. Just then, there was a man headed our way to use the restroom, so the creepy dude moved off me and I booked it back to my carriage, where I proceeded to stay for the remainder of the ride. I thought that my outburst and the little scene I caused would have deterred that sketchy guy from creeping on me anymore, but when I looked up, I noticed he was right back there in the hallway, staring at me. I was in disbelief that someone could be this blatantly lecherous. I started to wonder if there was actually a seat out in the hallway that was cheaper than a shared carriage, but then realized when I had left to use the bathroom, I hadn't seen any seats. I also remembered one unsettling detail too. This guy had no luggage, not even a briefcase. This was a 12+ hour trip from Germany to Rome. so everyone on this train was either coming or going from work or on a pleasure trip, but all of them had at least a small travel suitcase of sorts. So the fact that this guy had no luggage or briefcase or anything on him and was just standing in the hallway staring at me made my stomach drop. This man did not have good intentions. I couldn't rationalize it any other way. I spent the last hour or so of the trip devising my plan for when the train finally arrived in Rome. I knew the train station there very well and knew that the metro I needed to transfer to get back to my campus was down several flights of stairs and around more than a few twists and turns. I felt pretty confident, so when the train stopped, I had my backpack on, ready to go. The other Germans got out of the train ahead of me, and the creepy guy had to move for them to pass. I quickly followed in between them and jumped off the train and ran through the station without looking behind me. Thank God it was crowded. I felt safe once I blended into the crowd. I flew down the flights of stairs and around the turns without stopping. I finally got down to the platform for the local metro train I needed. I was catching my breath when I saw none other than the creepy guy come down the stairs and begin looking around for me. Then he found and locked eyes with me and had that evil, lecherous look, and I just wanted to cry. I grabbed tightly around my pocket knife I had in my coat and made my way next to a group of harmless-looking Italians. They seemed annoyed that I was standing so close to them. I was about several train car lengths away from him, but he started making his way over to me just as the train pulled up. I hopped on my car immediately and tried to position myself near some folks who kept scooting away from me. I noticed he had gotten on a few cars away. As the train began moving, he made his way down his car and into the next one. With each stop of the train made, he got a little more closer to me. I had moved a few cars down away from him, but grew increasingly worried the farther the train got outside of the Metro Rome area. Fewer and fewer people were on the train now, and he kept getting closer to me. When I made it to the first car and realized I had nowhere else to go, I noticed he was only one car away and headed straight for me. As we pulled into the next stop, I grasped my pocket knife tightly and made a last-ditch effort to evade him and got off the train. I looked to my right and, to my horror, saw that he had gotten off as well and was briskly running towards me. As the last few people shoved past me to get on the train, I realized I had no options left and dove back into the train without breaking eye contact with the sicko. As the doors to the train closed in front of him, I realized I had made it safely back onto the train, leaving him on the platform fuming and yelling as the train sped off. I spent the remainder of the train ride still in fight or flight mode. When the train arrived at the destination, I dashed upstairs to the above-ground bus that was to head back to my campus, making sure that I would sit next to a sweet old lady. The creepy dude never showed up on the bus, and once I made it back inside my campus's walls, I immediately fell to the ground and sobbed. I realized I was so incredibly lucky that I had evaded what was certainly a kidnapping, rape, murder even, who knows. I have never forgotten that man's face and the look in his eyes. I hadn't heard of anyone else at my school getting into situations like I did, but I made sure to tell all the girls and guys who were in the years below me to be careful when they study abroad, stay together, and to not do what those girls did to me. I hope this helps someone in some way. And if you ever see a man traveling a long distance without any luggage or briefcase at all, be wary. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed. Until next time.